Jay here from Stretford, Paddock, and this is the first ever episode of the Tier 1 Transfer Podcast. Joining me is my co-host, Ronaldo. Ronaldo, what can we expect from this podcast?
We can expect top-tier journalists, all the exclusive news surrounding Manchester United and all the other big clubs.
What better way to start the show by speaking to the chief football writer from The Times, Henry Winter. Me and Ronaldo spoke to Henry earlier today, and here's what he had to say. Henry, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Jay. Hi, Ronaldo, and congratulations on your new start. It's like a new start for the club as well as you guys.
Well, this is it, yeah. New beginnings. Exciting times. We'll crack straight on. Listen, you talk about it's like a new start for United, and one of the reasons behind that has been the form of Bruno Fernandes. He's been a revelation since he come into the United team. But there is a lot of fans asking the question, why didn't United sign him sooner? Why did we wait till January? What's your understanding of that? Why didn't Bruno come in the summer, for example?
I mean, I guess, as ever with Manchester United, it was financial, it was having to go through the structure, and it was a little bit delayed in acting. Whether they will now being a little bit more assertive in the market, obviously post-pandemic, Manchester United in a very strong position because of their financial strength. They'll be able to move more swiftly, more decisively. Look, it looks like you might have a similar issue with Sancho. But my view with Manchester United is if you've got a player who wants to come, and Bruno Fernandes has clearly been signalling that he wants to come, if you've got a player of that quality, if you've got a player who you're crying out for that sort of inventiveness, that sort of authority, that sort of player who, when he puts on the Manchester United shirt, and I've spoken to so many people at the club down the years who say a player comes in and the shirt weighs heavily. You know, we've all seen it with many good players who've come into Manchester United, and there's a lot of pressure there, not simply from the fans or the media, but just the whole history of the club. And also when they walk out to their first training session and they go into the rondo, and then, a few years back, you've got Scholes or you've got Keane pinging a ball at you to see whether you're good enough for Manchester United. That ethos still lives on in Carrington. Players are tested when they come in. So you've got to have that strong personality. Bruno Fernandes, anyone who had seen him play or knew his character or talked to people in Portugal, knew that he had that character. Ditto with Sancho. There'll be no question if Manchester United get hold of Jadon Sancho. You can argue, do you necessarily need that sort of type player with the development of Greenwood, and I'm still a sort of James fan. I think there are other issues that Manchester United can address. But in terms of Bruno Fernandes, yeah, they could have got him last year, and maybe some criticism could be aimed at Ed Woodward. But he's here now. He's hit the ground running, and he hasn't been the complete catalyst, because I think a lot of other people deserve credit for it. I think you look at the way Matic has come back. You look at the way sort of Solskjaer seems to have grown into the role. Look at the influence of the coaches behind the scene at Manchester United. Obviously, Marcus Rashford has trained on. Mason Greenwood has come to the fore. Luke Shaw's been playing well. They've worked really hard with Aaron Wan-Bissaka. 1v1s, his defending as well as his ability getting forward and the crossing. We're seeing more of that. So I think everyone's looking at Bruno Fernandes. Everyone maybe is looking at it as a stick still to beat Ed Woodward with. But it'd be far worse if Manchester United hadn't got him. So if the only criticism that's going to be laid at Manchester United's door at the moment is they could have got this fantastic player 4 or 5 months earlier, then I think that's a legitimate criticism. But the fact is he's here, and quite rightly, you're celebrating him.
Good stuff.
Good stuff. On the topic of Matic, you wrote recently about how important he's been to kind of United's recent kind of rejuvenation almost. And obviously he just signed a 3-year contract at the age of 31. What do you think about them extending his contract rather than looking in the transfer market for a kind of younger option?
Well, first, I'm a fan of Ghana. I mean, I've seen him play behind closed doors at Carrington in youth games a couple of years ago, and I think he's got the sort of personality and the ability. You don't want to sort of load down pressure on young players too early, but I hope that Manchester United look at him, he develops. Obviously he needs to develop physically and tactically, decision making and all that, but I think there's something around Ghana. I've seen it with the England age groups, and I've seen it, as I say, behind closed doors at Carrington, that there is a player in there. So I think he will absolutely develop, train on. So Matt, I mean, it was interesting. You looked at the players who were coming back from the lockdown, and all the stories coming out of the stats people were, I mean, and also the pictures you saw on Instagram of McTominay in training, out training He just looked fantastic. I mean, the numbers that he was putting in, he looks like a sort of 400-meter runner, and the stats were fantastic. So, I thought that he would return and build on it. But also, I think maybe I overlooked, or certainly I overlooked, the fact how hard Matic had been training. What a good player he is, how important he is for Manchester United in that position, with all that creativity around, effectively a sort of famous front five, if you include Pogba as a more attack-minded midfield player with Bruno Fernandes and then the three up front. That position, that pivot role is really important. And Matic has always had that intelligence. I personally thought, a year ago, even 6 months ago, that maybe his mobility wasn't necessarily up to what Solskjaer was trying to bring back in, which was that fluidity, that pace, that attacking momentum that Manchester United has always been famed for, and which really disappeared, unfortunately, for 2, 3, 4 years. But Matic, look, he's an intelligent player. He's a hungry player. He's a Serb. He's going to go out and do everything he can to win. He is a winner. But I just think maybe it's something physical with him. He looks, I don't know, I've not talked to him, I've not sort of been up close to him, but he looks lean and hungry and he just looks an athlete. Personally, I was surprised it was 3 years. I assumed they'd offer him a new contract because of the way that he was playing. So look, it's fantastic for Manchester United. You got a player in there, and look, I mean, a year ago, I think when I talked to you, I wasn't probably the biggest fan of Fred. I think Fred's had a terrific season. McTominay obviously is training on, is continuing to train on. So it's great that Manchester United have got options in that area.
Henry, obviously you've been attending games and covering football matches. What's it been like being in the ground with no fans? What have you made of it all?
Sad, really sad. I mean, you go to games and there isn't the adrenaline. I mean, I'm just going there as a journalist to report on things, but as reporters, you're effectively holding up the mirror to the game, to the occasion, to all the things that people who aren't at the game, they want to know about. I mean, they don't simply just want to know headers and volleys. They want to know about the atmosphere, the mood, what people are talking about, what it's like outside the ground, what it's like inside the ground. And I mean, I've been to, I think, 8 or 9 BCD games now, and they're just grim, they're soulless. I mean, I was at Spurs last night, and you just wander through these great sort of caverns that they've got there, which are normally full of fans. And you can slag off the sort of the corporate and slightly gentrified world of sort of modern football stadium, but it's still buzzing with people. There's still an electricity there. And for the first 3 games that I went to, I sat in the ground and I texted fans from supporters groups of each of the teams who were playing, and I said, listen, it's important that I reflect your views in my match reports, because it's the old thing. I mean, it's Busby saying fans without games without fans, football without fans are nothing. I mean, it's many great managers have said that and echoed those sentiments, and he's right. And it is just, I hope the authorities realise how important fans are. The players certainly do. You can see it. They're only at 80%. There isn't that intensity. There isn't that adrenaline. I was talking to Jack Grealish, and he was saying, it's not simply having the Holte End lifting me. I thrive off them. It's also having the opposition fans slagging me off because I'm the type of player that sort of opposition fans will like to boo or whatever. And he says he thrives off that. And I just think it is soulless. I think that's the only way to describe it. So I think when Project Restart ends and Project Reset, as I'm sure the Premier League will call it, and when the league returns in whatever it is, the second weekend in September, I hope they do appreciate the importance of fans, because the money that the Premier League get through television and radio broadcasting, a chunk of that money is overseas broadcasters, home broadcasters, Sky and BT, pay because of you guys, because of the backdrop, because of the Stretford end, because of the car, because of all these great stands and the great historic supports in this country. I mean, I would say, and I'm not just saying this because I'm talking to you, I've written this on countless occasions, you've got the best away support in the country. I mean, it is formidable. You go, and even when the team's been crap under Jose and not particularly inspiring under Van Gaal, you were there, you were supporting the noise. I mean, I helped Michael Carrick with a book, and he took his son to the Burnley game. I think he was also at Turf Moor. He was also in the Anfield Road end where Manchester United were there as well. And he talked about what it was like to be with the away fans. The away fans are absolutely vital in this country. That's why I've always thought, and look, I'm one small voice amongst many, but this whole 20's plenty, the cost for away fans, particularly when you put it on top of, you guys know what the M6 and the M60 are like trying to get out of there. I mean, at night trying to get home, some people live far away, they have to travel. It's really difficult with kickoff times being changed. So look, this is a long rant which many journalists will express, which many football fans will express, that fans have got to be treated better. I'm a big fan of the Football Supporters Association. They've got to be harder. They've got to be more militant. Fans got to be more militant like they are in Germany. Take a stand. Manchester United fans, Liverpool fans, you two as sets of sport have always been really good, really strong, standing up to owners, standing up to things that are changing in the game. Got to do it more. Keep doing it. Get other clubs involved. Look, Newcastle United fans are going, been campaigning against Ashley. Fans have got to campaign more. Because of the cost, because for me as a journalist going into grounds, just honestly come to a game behind closed doors. I know you'd like to, but you would sit there in the stand, socially distanced from your mates, and we're all friends in the press box, even though we're rivals, but you're socially distanced from each other. You look round and you say, this is just so wrong. This, if anyone has had any doubts about the vital, essential nature of fans as the lifeblood of the game, go to a BCD game and you will realise how important they are. And I just hope the authorities, the Premier League, and the broadcasters do, because as everyone says, it's horrible in there. It really is.
Henry, moving forward in terms of next season, do you think football should go ahead without any fans in the ground?
Yeah, what I meant with Project Reset is that I think they've just got to have a new era of appreciating supporters and realising actually, and the fans have got to be more militant on this as well, and actually saying we are part of the spectacle, the show, as the Premier League calls it. We should actually be not recompensed financially, but certainly in terms of lower ticket prices, more understanding on kickoff times. You guys kicked off at 3 o'clock on a Saturday, I think, last weekend, and I was going, this is weird. Manchester United at 3 o'clock on a Saturday. It was just, the famous fanzine was called When Saturday Comes. I think Liverpool changed one of their fanzine titles to When Sunday Comes. You guys get messed around the whole time. And if this pandemic and these games behind closed doors have confirmed one thing, is you look down the leagues, the fact that they're not getting fans into the grounds, that is sending clubs to the wall. You look at the Premier League, no fans in the grounds. You got broadcasters saying, this isn't the show, this isn't the spectacle. Okay, we've got Kevin De Bruyne. Okay, we've got Mason Greenwood. Okay, we've got great actors on the stage. But football is not simply about the 90 minutes and the 22 players. It's about the backdrop. So look, when football returns, and it's supposed to come, I think it's on the 12th of September, 11th, 12th, 13th, the Friday, probably be the first game. Look, they might have like 5,000-10,000 people in the grounds, but I would be surprised if we see full grounds before January, because I think they'll grow out. I know there's all the lockdowns breaking down and things are vaguely returning to normal, but I think it will take a bit of time. But absolutely. But in terms of, for me, Project Reset is just a reset in Premier League thinking, in clubs thinking, in terms of ticket prices, in terms of away prices as well. So, look, I've thought that for a long time. I've also thought the fans have got to be more militant.
Last time we spoke, you were sort of singing the praises of Marcus Rashford. You said, what not just a great footballer he was, but what a great young man he was. What do you make of the summer he's had? Because he's been the sort of the toast of the country, really, hasn't he?
Well, I mean, who's the more important number 10 in the country at the moment? I mean, Marcus Rashford or Boris Johnson? I mean, he absolutely ran rings around Boris Johnson. I mean, I know a few politicians, and I was talking to them, I was saying, don't take on footballers. When Matt Hancock came out with his nonsense stuff about footballers not doing enough, I was thinking, okay, well, I know Marcus Rashford is involved in these, it's not just the school meal scheme that Rashford's been involved in. He was involved with UNICEF or Water Initiative. He's obviously been involved in, he's just a good person. But footballers are like that. Footballers come from backgrounds, and they don't forget those backgrounds. Okay, they live in nice houses and nice cars, although actually, I've been to Marcus Rashford's place. He's one of the least flashy people I've met in or out of football. Just very focused, very dedicated. He's got good people, good family around him. He's got an amazing mother, very strong woman. I had lunch with her, and very, very strong, powerful, a good person, good values, and she's brought Marcus Rashford and the boys up the right way. Obviously, Marcus's brothers are around him; they're guiding him. But I mean, he's guiding him. I mean, he's a strong person. He knows what he wants, and this is what the politicians didn't realise. And I don't want to make this a party political thing, because they're sort of, they're bad politicians and good politicians on either side. But they're just naive. They're just in their Westminster bubble. They don't realise the work that Marcus Rashford does. When he goes back to Wythenshawe, when he talks to sort of people on the street there, when he sort of gives them advice, but not in a patronising look what I've done way, more in a way of you can achieve what you want to in life, whether you want to go into dance, whether you want to go into journalism, whether you want to go into football, whatever sports, of athletics, whether you want to be a doctor, whatever you want to do in life, just persist, strive. And Marcus Rashford is a fantastic role model for that. I mean, the way that he's fought through the back condition that he's had, which I think people became slightly more aware of after the Wolves game, when he was slightly surprisingly sort of, introduced to the pitch. He's a tough guy mentally and physically. And I think Manchester United, well, look, first, it's huge credit to the academy, to Rashford's family, to the people around him, and above all, to him. He's got a good moral compass. And I just thought it's so naive of politicians like Matt Hancock when they were having a go at footballers and saying, well, they've got to play their part. Well, I knew a lot of footballers who were taking wage cuts. There's one player in London who I would say probably gives about 3-4 million quid a year to assorted charities. Now, there was an issue for players at their clubs if they sort of decided to take wage cuts. Is that effectively just easing an issue for a multi-billionaire who's living in the Everglades or he's living in Russia or wherever? I can completely understand why Harry Maguire, who's been absolutely brilliant with this, and the Players Together initiative with Mark Noble and Kevin De Bruyne and Jordan Henderson, all the captains coming together, all the sort of leading players coming together, and doing something, and just doing the right thing. Not because for PR, and Rashford's never been for PR, but because it's the right thing to do. Because if anyone knows, and they know far more than politicians and far more than me, because I had sort of quite a privileged upbringing, they know the sort of the issues that are out there on the NHS medical side. I mean, what group of young people know most how important doctors and nurses are? Young sportsmen and women, because in a way their careers are in the hands of gifted medical people, so they appreciate how much what the NHS do. They appreciate how important it is for young kids to have people keeping an eye on them. I mean, I don't know Marcus extremely well, but I've done interviews with him down the years, and I've sort of scratched the surface. I didn't know he'd been to soup kitchens as a kid. I didn't know he'd used food banks. So when he came out, I think he spoke about it in his BBC interview. I found that very, very powerful, but another indication of why he's driven like this, to look after people in Wythenshawe. And what really impressed me, look, so many things impressed me about Marcus Rashford, off field as well as on, but actually when he'd won, when he'd made a complete idiot out of Boris Johnson and the politicians who were going, no, this can't be done, and one or two of them were having pops at him on Twitter, and then one or two of them can even remember his name. I mean, how disgraceful is that? That he then actually, he was incredibly dignified in victory, and he said, look, this is what happens when the country comes together. And I thought that he's 22. I thought that was really, really classy. So I hope some politicians have learnt their lesson there. I hope Hancock shows a bit more humility in the future. I mean, look, Boris Johnson, you can see he's still not recovered from the virus. He's lost his old swagger, but he shouldn't have taken on a footballer with a cause.
Completely agree.
Obviously, coming from like one academy graduate to another, with the current form of Greenwood in a way, he's pretty much like forced his way into the attacking lineup. Where do you see him in in the future of Ollie's plans going into next season?
An essential part of it, and I think it's probably an essential part of England going to the Euros. I think that what's really interesting, and I've spoken to Carrick about Mason Greenwood. And on the record, Michael Carrick just eulogised about a young player. Now, often you talk to coaches and managers at clubs, and if they've got a real star player coming through, they'll often try to take the heat out of the situation. They don't want anything to go to the player's head, but they can obviously completely trust Mason Greenwood's personality, the fact that he's grounded, the fact he's got good people around him, the fact that he listens, he learns, he's developing. And you could hear it with Solskjaer's comments in press conference. You could hear it when I spoke to Michael Carrick recently at one of his foundation events. He spoke glowingly about Mason Greenwood, about how he was developing. And I mean, Carrick, a great technical player, but he just laughed when I said, which is Mason Greenwood's better foot. Everyone says he favours his left, but he can take penalties with his right. We saw the other day he can finish with both feet, and those were just unbelievable finishes. And Carrick just sort of laughed, and he said, "Well, actually, he's good with both, and that's quite rare now, particularly with a player young. You often hear about players saying, "Oh, I'm good on my right, but I'm working on my left." But he's got that ability, and he's got clearly the work ethic, which is what you need at Manchester United, which is what Solskjaer demands, which is what the fans demand, and he will go, great places. I mean, he just looks so special. He's one of those players who, if he played on snow, he wouldn't leave footprints. He just floats. He's got that gliding ability, that natural intelligence to take up the right positions, and he's also got Fernandes and Pogba and good people around him. Wan-Bissaka putting crosses, Rashford helping out. He's got good people around him to help. So I think that because he's got options, I don't think Solskjaer will use him overly as he did with Rashford. I thought a year ago Rashford was being played too much, particularly given that he had this well-known back problem. So I think maybe Solskjaer, as an intelligent manager, will bring Greenwood in and out. I think ultimately, in terms of, you talk to young players, and often they like the Thierry Henry. They like to cut in from the flank. Obviously, Greenwood can do that on either foot. So if you're playing effectively a 4-3-3 or 4-1-2-3, whatever you want to call it, Greenwood can play either side and cut in. But I think also, because he's so calm in the box, because he can slow the game down, and he's so nerveless, I think you can play him as a centre forward. Look, you need to ask a more technical mind than mine, but I just think he's so gifted he can play anywhere across that front three.
The reason why I asked is because there was kind of this kind of thing going around where, because of Greenwood's rise, people thought that it kind of lessened United's need to get Jadon Sancho in the summer. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, what's also been good is Martial. I mean, Martial, I know Manchester United fans love Martial, but I think his best form has pretty much been recently. I mean, I saw his debut, and he came on. Sorry, he scored against Liverpool at Old Trafford, and he was terrific. He looked a great player, and I think he really looks like a proper number 9. He can play in that role. But I just think you need options. I mean, if you're effectively going to play a front 3, and you've got Greenwood, Martial, and Marcus Rashford, MMM. I'm sure you guys will come up with some clever name for it. You got Daniel James, who I think is a terrific player. Remember when Daniel James was bought? He was one who was bought for next season. And I think that he's got the sort of personality and the gifts. They'll work on his decision making, final ball, and all that. But I think there's a player in there. But can I see Jadon Sancho in a Manchester United shirt? Absolutely, because he's got that personality. Can I see him coming back to England? Absolutely. I think the model at Dortmund is you buy young, you pay teenagers good wages, you then sell them on, and if Sancho, I mean, look, they're asking for a lot of money, and Manchester United may feel they can negotiate a bit more in the post-pandemic world. But I think if you got Sancho in there, I mean, wow. But I think if Sancho comes in, that makes sense. Manchester United have got the money. It strengthens the squad, strengthens the options. You're Manchester United. You should be competing for the Champions League. You should be competing for 4 trophies a year. You're going to need a bigger squad, particularly in this slightly complicated year with the players are not really going to have much of a summer. It's going to be a truncated season. They're going into probably the under-21s and then the seniors next summer. The year after that, you're going into the World Cup. There's the African Cup of Nations for some clubs. So look, a big squad makes sense. I still think you need, personally, I think you need another centre half. I think long term, your goalkeeping, the succession to De Gea, will be Dean Henderson. I'm a huge fan of his because I've seen him play for the under-21s. I've seen him play for Sheffield United enough. And what I like about Henderson is that when he made a mistake, he comes out and talks afterwards. He comes out, he doesn't hide. You can't hide with Chris Wilder, and you can't hide when you're playing for England, even the under-21s. You know, we wanted to talk to him after he made that mistake against France in the under-21s last summer. Came out and talked strong, took responsibility. We move on. He's developing. Henderson will sort out your goalkeeping issues long term. You might need someone who's going to put pressure on De Gea short term. A centre half partner for Harry Maguire, I would say, is your most pressing concern at the moment. But on Sancho, look, if Ed Woodward's got 120 million euros in his back pocket because of all this amazing commercial money that you generate, I'd much rather see you get Jadon Sancho than the money just sit in the Glazers' bank account.
Yeah, I think we all would. Yeah. I remember last time we spoke, you spoke about you were reluctant to overhype Greenwood. You said, you've got to be careful with hyping certain young players. And with the likes of Greenwood, with the likes of even Sancho and Bellingham, do you think there is sort of too much hype sometimes and adding too much pressure on these youngsters? Or do you think they're equipped to deal with it?
I think if you come up through Manchester United's academy like Greenwood and Rashford, obviously Bellingham and Sancho are slightly different. If you come through the Manchester United academy and you walk through that corridor there and you see the pictures of Giggs and Charlton and Best and Beckham and all these players who've, legends of the club who've come up through the system, I think you understand the weight of expectation. And I think you live with it, and the good players respond to it. And we've seen players inhibited by it, and you've seen players actually blossom with it. So, no, I think a player like Sancho, if he came in, he wouldn't have a problem with dealing with that sort of pressure. Do we put pressure on them? I think to an extent it's actually excitement, particularly if you're covering England, which a lot of reporters who also, because we kind of go to the top games, we cover Manchester United. A lot of the reporters in the press box cover England, and there was a desire to see more talent coming through and a bit more, swagger's not the right word, but more confidence and more belief coming through to England. So when you actually see players coming through Manchester United with Greenwood, with Brandon Williams, I'm sure will get linked with England. He's another local player as well, and he's a fantastic talent. Players like that, I think it's natural to be excited. Okay, there's a bit of hyping. I mean, the whole thing about Greenwood a year ago is there was, slightly going back on what I said earlier about Greenwood, I kind of detect a mood change at Manchester United, and this might be purely a journalistic perception, is that in the last year, they've realised that Greenwood can deal with the expectation. So they haven't minded praise for him. They haven't minded people within the building, i.e. Carrick and Solskjaer, talking so positively about Greenwood's qualities. Certainly 2 years ago, I don't think they wanted him mentioned too often. But, talent talks.
Definitely. It's difficult not to get excited with Mason Greenwood.
No, it's difficult. But on to another transfer target, obviously kind of second in only behind the Jadon Sancho in kind of importance, as it seems, Jack Grealish, you mentioned earlier. He's actually obviously created the second most chances behind Kevin De Bruyne this season, and he's obviously been strongly linked to us. Could you see United actually solidifying that deal or not?
I mean, I always thought Maddison was ahead of Grealish in that type of role that Manchester United would have gone to, but I don't know. I just don't think that. Do you need a Grealish? Do you need a Maddison? I mean, you've got Bruno Fernandes. I guess a lot of it is, I know Paul Pogba is a completely different player, but Pogba's better than Maddison and Grealish. I like Grealish. I like Maddison. Good individuals, good footballers. I mean, what's interesting about Grealish is that he, as coaches say, he chews the ball. He likes to dribble, which is great because he gets free kicks. And that's good if you've got someone like Fernandes, who can whip in a free kick. So that is good. But Manchester United, for me, under Solskjaer, seem more about pace, quick transition. And he's quick, but he's not. Grealish is not lightning, nor is Maddison. I don't know. Can I see Grealish or Maddison getting in ahead of Fernandes or Pogba in those positions behind the front three? Absolutely no chance. So I don't. I can absolutely see why Villa will sell, whether they stay up or go down. And Madison, outside Grealish will sort out lots of issues. Will Maddison necessarily leave Leicester? I think Leicester will sell one this summer, probably Chilwell to Chelsea, and then they're an incredibly wealthy club, so I don't think Leicester will necessarily need to sell two. Maddison would absolutely love to play for Manchester United. I mean, you can just see that in his body language. I don't know. I may be completely wrong. I have no inside information on sort of Grealish or Maddison, but I wouldn't have thought, for me, I wouldn't have thought they were high up on their. You just look at the way the Manchester United play. If you've got Sancho can play left or he can play right. Actually, he can play. I've seen him play through the middle. He's a really intelligent player. He's not your orthodox number 9, but he's got that ability to play through there, as like Sterling has done occasionally for City. So Grealish and Maddison, yeah, look, people who work more on transfer speculation than me, I mean, maybe ask them, but do Manchester United need either of those two? I'm not sure they do.
What did you make of the Angel Gomes situation? Because it looks at one point like he was going to sign a new deal and he didn't. How much of a loss do you think that is for United not to be able to keep hold of a talented youngster like Angel?
I think you trust in the process, you trust in Solskjaer, you trust the people there. And I think if everyone sees Solskjaer as this really nice individual, but you don't play at the top level that he's done. You don't go through the injuries that he's done. You don't go through the sort of managerial pressure that he would have been felt under at Manchester United and come through the other side. And now everyone's praising him without having a sort of tough, decisive element. He would have been heavily involved in any decision about Angel Gomes. I do think it's quite interesting. You look at the reaction of a few of the other players. He's obviously a really popular individual. I think it's sad, but if he wants to play regularly, I don't think he's necessarily going to do it at Manchester United in the next 18 months.
Last time you spoke to Jay, it almost seemed as if Pochettino was kind of waiting in the shadows, so to speak. Do you still kind of view it that way, or do you believe that Ole or United see Ole as the long-term option?
No, I've always felt that Solskjaer should be given the chance. I've always been a fan of Solskjaer. I mean, that night in Paris, I remember. And just sort of, it seemed like Manchester United were finding their way back. I could completely understand why there were a lot of people pushing for Pochettino, maybe within the building, and certainly, a lot of the media and a lot of the fans, because Pochettino, what a talent. But no, I'm a big fan of Solskjaer. I mean, Chris Smalling hosted an event in Manchester about a year ago, and Solskjaer turned out, and he was just so impressive. An individual, so humble. I've got a lot of time for him. I mean, I'm old enough to remember his first press conference at the Cliff, and it was when was it '96 and Manchester United, they had sort of like 5 or 6 players were being unveiled as we called it, and there were some sort of decent names there, big names. And I remember talking to one of the coaching staff, Ferguson's coaching staff, and he says Solskjaer would be the best of the lot. And I think he was 21 or whatever. I don't know how young he was, but he was just a talent, and we saw that sort of blossom. So no, I'm a big admirer of his. Always been a supporter of his. You talk to the people in the club. I'm not particularly well connected at the club, but you just one or two people there, and you just hear that when Solskjaer comes in, he knows the name of all the people there, obviously because he was there before, but he's just, he's a very human person. He will stop. Television reporters will tell you this as well. They'll interview him, and Solskjaer will just sort of engage afterwards and before. He won't just rush off. He's a good person, a good citizen. It's a little bit like the sort of famous All Blacks thing, if I can use this word, the no dickheads policy. I think that is, Solskjaer's got that. He wants good people because he's a good person himself, and he's very impressive. So I've always wanted him to do well. I've always, I hope, spoken up in support of him, partly because having been through Van Gaal and Mourinho, I felt Manchester United had lost their way. I mean, I don't need you to tell you that because you're right in the middle of it. But looking at it from the outside as someone who respects the club and goes there and really enjoys going there, I like Manchester United's values. I like those old principles of, the Ferguson, the Busby, believe in youth, attack, attack, attack. be fearless, be emboldened by the shirt. I can remember Carrick talking about when he was at West Ham as a kid, and he was in the corridor outside the West Ham dressing room. The away dressing room was just down the corridor, and he saw Keane and the Manchester United players sort of turn up in their blazers, and he said, "I want to wear that blazer. I want to wear that shirt. There's something about Manchester United." Fans will call it swagger, players might call it authority, but there is something about that. And I think Solskjaer embodies that. Solskjaer embodies those principles, the attacking, never giving up. I mean, he embodies that last minute goal. And I just think, so I like that. I think it's like he was the guide to get Manchester United back on its old path. And it might be a slight sort of cliche, oh, let's rediscover the Ferguson way, let's rediscover the Busby way. But actually, isn't that the DNA and the identity of Manchester United? And if anyone identifies that, never giving up, attacking, giving everything, representing the club well on and off the pitch, it's Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. So I think Manchester United not only found the right manager to take them forward, but also the right person to take the club forward. I'm not a fan of the Glazers. I've been critical of them from the word go. I think don't need to tell you this, but they're clearly there simply for financial reasons. And I think Manchester United have lost their way as a club under under the Glazers. It's become all about the money rather than about the football. And what I liked about Solskjaer is that he actually tilted it back a bit. Actually, it's more about the football. It's more about the people. It's more about the civility of going into Carrington in the morning, asking the receptionist how she is, talking to the kit man, popping your head around the corner of the laundry room. How is everyone? Bring a box of Norwegian chocolates in, or whatever it is. Just, I think he's turned Manchester United from being a corporate organisation and reminded everyone that it's also a family.
Yeah, because even recently, Luke Shaw has only just come out and said he feels like this is the most confident United team he's ever played in. So how much can you kind of attribute that to Ole's man management?
You see, man management is absolutely key. I mean, the two most important things for managers to survive are good recruitment and good man management. The people skills. Ferguson had it, stick and carrot. He was absolutely brilliant at it. Mourinho had it when he was at Chelsea first time round. He lost it certainly on the man management side. In particular, I wrote a few columns on it. I couldn't understand. Anyone who knows Luke Shaw is a good player, but he needs to be loved. He needs the arm around him. He needs people to tell him he is really good. And then to say, Luke, you've got so much talent. You can blossom even more, being one of the best left backs in the world. Just work on this, work on elements of your game, work on maybe sort of certain conditioning things in the gym, maybe have a look at some of your sort of elements to the game that he can improve, but do it within a framework of love and appreciation. And I think Mourinho was too cold for Luke Shaw. Some players respond to that. You might respond to people at work sort of shouting at you, but actually I think increasingly players respond more to sort of kind of softer words, pointing them in the right direction. Excuse me. So I thought it was very interesting that Luke Shaw came out and said that. And I think it also reflected the fact that Luke Shaw is playing his best football at Manchester United. That injury was awful that he went through. It was. I've talked to players who were on the pitch, and they really can't describe their emotions, let alone what they saw when Luke Shaw got injured like that. So was it PSV? I can't remember. I think it was. You guys remember. It was a horrendous injury. So it showed a bit of his character to come back from that. Obviously, I think there's a slight diffidence to Luke Shaw as a footballer, and he just needed that love that Solskjaer's given him, that Carrick's given him, that the coaching staff have given him to rebuild. Plus, also he's got pressure on him for his place.
100%. Yeah, as you mentioned, Brandon Williams obviously waiting in the wings. In terms of Ole, do you think he's got the ability and he's got it in his locker or whatever to get United challenging at the very top, to get us eventually challenging for titles? Do you think he is a talented enough manager to do that?
Yes, he has. He's shown that. He has slowly been building the team in his own image and in Manchester United, what I consider Manchester United's real image, with attackers, with creativity, with fullbacks who attack. I think increasingly, and I hope we see it with Maguire, that he steps into midfield, because Maguire can do that. I think you're seeing increasingly with Maguire, he can switch play and he can release the sort of the wide raiders you've got out on the flanks. Absolutely. I think it's very much, you should be incredibly excited about the future under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Recruitment looks better. He's clearly having an influence in that. I mean, look, who are your last few signings? Wan-Bissaka. Maguire obviously needs to work on concentration. We saw that in a couple of games recently. Particularly the Bergman one was different. The Stanislas wasn't particularly impressive. But look, you know, the recruitment's good, the mentality is good, the confidence is back. Things are in a fantastic place with Manchester United. The issue now is that if you look around, you know, the Premier League, Arsenal are reviving under Arteta. They've got some fantastic kids. Manchester City will undoubtedly buy. Obviously, they've got to get through CAS. That will be an issue for them. But if they're not in the Champions League next season, they're going to go full tilt for the Premier League. Manchester City will always be a force. Liverpool have got 2 or 3 fantastic kids coming through. I'm sure, and I think they need one big signing just to sort of stir them up again. But clearly, they're an exceptional team. So you've got 2 outstanding teams in the country, City and Liverpool. Manchester United absolutely fighting to get into that 3rd position behind them, and ultimately maybe in 2-3 years' time really push higher up. There's something really good happening at Manchester United. I'm an outsider, and I can see it. So you should be excited, but you do need a centre half, and you do need De Gea to re-find his old form.
Kind of with the constant like uncertainty that's been surrounding Paul Pogba, like in recent times, that's kind of been eased, like recently with United's kind of rejuvenation and like run of form. Do you see Pogba actually staying beyond the summer transfer window?
Well, first I hope he does. For Manchester United, because he's a world-class player. I think for the Premier League, you want stellar talents like that to be in the league, so you can see them regularly. But I also think for Paul Pogba himself, I think if he looks at what he's got at Manchester United, it's a special club, it's a family club, and that particularly with Solskjaer back. He knows it, having sort of grown up there. You look at him, what he's got on the field. He's got Matic or McTominay or Fred doing that sort of more holding work. Pogba, we know he can put in a tackle. He's shown that recently. But Pogba and Fernandes can be a fantastic axis, friendship even, for the future for Manchester United. And I just think that Paul Pogba could have the best 3 years of his life. And this is a player who won at Juventus and obviously has won the World Cup. But I think he could get great club fulfillment with a Manchester United who are about to relaunch. Everyone can see that with the talent they've got. And Pogba's personality, but also his sublime footballing skills, the decision making, the way he took on Eric Dyer in the Spurs game and just sort of bamboozled him and then got the penalty. I mean, he's an outstanding footballer. He's just got a rather annoying agent. So I think if Pogba could control Raiola, and actually, I don't know what the situation is. I can't believe he needs to leave for financial reasons. Okay, look, I'm sure Real Madrid and Zidane will flutter their eyelashes at him again. And a player of his caliber will want to be playing in the Champions League, will want to be playing for Real Madrid, are the most famous club in the world. But will he enjoy it as much as he will do at Manchester United with those young players, with the fans supporting him? I mean, Pogba could become a king. He could become as loved as Cantona, and that's probably quite an extreme saying, because Cantona was, the rebel, the maverick, the catalyst of so much that was good about the Ferguson era. But in terms of, you can't make that comparison, but in terms of the love that Pogba could get, if he settled down and focused and drove Manchester United on and became another king of Old Trafford, look, I hope he does. I hope he does for his benefit and for his sake, as well as for Manchester United's, because he's such a special player. And I know he's annoying, and I know some of the, the return from injury and all the Instagram posts and that were slightly sort of strange and I thought almost a bit disrespectful. But I think when he's focused, and you can see some of the footage that the players post of when they're all together. When I was at Daniel James was dancing the other day and Pogba was laughing, he said, "Oh, Manchester United's dressing room was a pretty special place. You won't get that at Real Madrid."
So if we're able to actually keep Paul Pogba, obviously behind the window, and obviously add one or two potential stars and strengthen the squad even further, if you look at the United team as it is, how far behind Liverpool do you think we actually are?
Far behind Liverpool. Oh, quite.
Yeah.
I mean, Liverpool are, Liverpool are
The answer
I mean, look, we've got to deal in reality here. I mean, look, Manchester United are fantastic, but they're still a work in progress. I mean, Liverpool are European champions, English champions, and world champions. I can remember when you got, it's one of the funniest chants I've ever heard, at the airport coming back from Tokyo when you just won the World Club Cup. And there were about 30 United fans in the corner at the bar, 9 o'clock in the morning, flying back, singing "Bring on the Martians." And that is the level that you were at. You conquered the world, and now you were conquering outer space, and that's the level that Liverpool are at. But football is cyclical, particularly with the resources that Manchester United have got. Other people will take points off Liverpool next season because City will be stronger, Arsenal will be stronger, Chelsea will be a force as well. So I think it's going to be a good title race next season. But I think absolutely Manchester United can get back up to that level again, and they should see Liverpool as a challenge. I actually think what's been quite interesting during the pandemic, there's been quite a bit of respect between the two sides. I know people on the sort of community side at both clubs, and you've got a fantastic foundation with John running it at Manchester United, and that's, strange thing to say, but Manchester United have had a very good lockdown, in terms of how the players have behaved, the foundation, the amazing work that your foundation does, and because of its partnerships with schools, inner city schools, and I know they've been working with Michael Carrick's foundation as well. But the work that the foundation has got, and please don't ever forget this, this is something you should be so proud of. Your foundation is world class. The work that they do, that John Shields does, that 60, 70 people work? It's probably more work full time in the foundation. The fact that your kitchens at Old Trafford have still been churning out meals which have gone to sort of people and hungry kids in the local area. People talk about Marcus Rashford's amazing work individually, and a lot of the focus on Manchester United sort of altruism has been focused on Rashford's amazing work. But the club have been absolutely brilliant. You've got good people in the building as well. Juan Mata, Harry Maguire. You should be very proud of what Manchester. Look, you're there to win games. You're there to, it's all about results. It's about the glory on the pitch. But don't forget how good Manchester United have been in terms of the community, in terms of the country, in terms of the global community, the work that all your, 300 supporters clubs, that the money from, the 20th anniversary Legends game against Barcelona, that money has gone, has been used on the money that they've raised. So that was that? Yeah, it was a year ago, wasn't it? The money that you had, that game you had, the Manchester United had this money. So Manchester United were in place to go. I was talking to John Shields about this, and you've got schools locally where you've got the kids and the families are so poor that the mother is eating one day and the dad the next. Now we're in the 21st century. We're a wealthy country. We're supposedly a sophisticated country. That should not be happening. The government are letting communities down. And Manchester United are stepping in with their foundation, with the help of the players, and filling the void there. So you should be really proud about what your club's done. So anyway, foundation speech over. I just think it's important that people remember that clubs are not just about 11 players. They're not just about slightly annoying owners. There's so many elements that make up a football club, and foundations just go around, saving lives, basically, feeding kids, like Marcus has done, like the club have done. So, can't remember what your question was. Sorry, I was just talking.
I think it was how far we are behind Liverpool.
Okay, so the general point is, I'm not a fan of the Glazers, but as a club, you've got so much going for you: foundation, players, Solskjaer, academy, things like that. In terms of how far, but yeah, you're behind Liverpool. I mean, you've got intelligent fans. You don't need to tell me that. Me to tell you that. I understand there's tribalism. And fans, you go on social media and fans will say, oh, well, we'll give them a good game. Well, look, Liverpool have raised the bar, just like Manchester United raised the bar, just like Manchester City raised the bar. But Manchester United will respond. It's the history of the club. You fought back from, major adversities off the field, on the field, which obviously anything off the field puts on the field into perspective. But, you've been through a lot as a club, and there's a resilience to Manchester United. And I think you've got good people in the right positions now. Harry Maguire's a good captain. I wasn't really a fan of Valencia as a captain. I liked Ashley Young, but I didn't necessarily feel he wasn't really going to start. So I just think you've got a good captain in place. Look, Maguire needs to raise his game with one or two things on the pitch: concentration, response. I get that. But you've got good people running the club now. I mean, Ed Woodward, I think, has maybe taken a step back in terms of maybe his public profile. I don't know. But actually, I mean, the thing about Woodward, I'm not, I've been very critical of him, but I think he does. I think he actually cares about the club. He wants Manchester United to do well. Clearly, it's obviously in his interest. But I just think the balance is much better now. Again, I'm not a fan of the Glazers. I just think their business model, I think it stinks. I think they, taking money out of the club like they do. I hate the idea that the wealthiest footballing organisation, the biggest money spinning organisation in the country, has still got debts. I mean, sort that out. Glazers will sell Manchester United in a few years' time, and they'll make £2-3 billion profit, and they'll walk away absolutely laughing, and they'll have a nice barbecue in the Everglades and pat each other on the back and say how clever they've been. But actually do it with a little bit more class. I mean, I remember I go back to that game at Wigan when I saw them turn up and I saw their security people push Manchester United fans out the way, and I thought, you are an absolute disgrace. And I just thought, well, actually, if you own Manchester United, engage with the fans, just show a little bit more humanity, a little bit more humility, a little bit more enjoyment. You've got Manchester United. You can watch Marcus Rashford for free. You can go down to the training ground, watch Mason Greenwood play. It's just what a fantastic, they'll call it a financial asset. I would call it just a fantastic, it's like being a kid and having the biggest toy set, chain set, whatever. I mean, it's just enjoy it. So look, people criticize Abramovich, but Abramovich loves Chelsea. Abramovich genuinely enjoys going down to the training ground at Cobham when he's allowed in the country and actually watching the under-16s, the under-17s, the ladies team, the first team train. Enjoy it. Footballers' ownership is about a custodianship, but it's also about a love as well as a financial return for a club. And anyway, the Glazers don't get that. So, but look, otherwise you've got so much going for you as a club. But will you catch Liverpool? Not going to happen for a year or so, but you're on the right path.
That was actually going to be my final question. If we make the right signings, if we keep Pogba and some of the other issues you've addressed, how long do you think it is before we can start not winning a title, but being in that conversation and challenging for the title? Do you think that's going to be another couple of seasons?
No, I think you'll be in the conversation next season. I think that Manchester United, as they are now, when they go to Anfield, and I hope it's a full Anfield, and I hope it's a full Old Trafford when Liverpool come, this will be a different Manchester United. There'll be more on the front foot. There'll be more belief. There'll be more attacking. With luck, there'll be a bit more defensive resilience, particularly if someone like Nathan Ake comes in. Ake's not the tallest, but he's got the mobility. He's got the pace. He's got the reading of the game. He's left-footed. He'll balance Maguire. So I think if you sort out the sort of defence like that, you've got players who won't be in awe of going to Anfield. Pogba's not going to be cowed by the Kop. Bruno Fernandes is not going to, worry about being in a midfield battle. However good, hard workers and probable footballers of the year like Jordan Henderson are. I mean, you've got players, you've got the belief back. So you'll be in the conversation next season. Can I see you winning the title next season? No, but I can see you getting a trophy somewhere along the line and gradually rebuilding. I mean, I went through a few years of watching Ferguson's teams build and have setbacks and just come back from away trips and difficult foreign trips in Europe and build throughout the 90s, and then you won the Champions League. I saw you do it in the league as well. It takes time. I tell you what, it's going to be a mighty fight for the title next season, which might actually reduce the final points total a bit, because City will be in there scrapping. Chelsea and Arsenal will take points off people. Wolves and Leicester on the fringes will be a threat. And then you've got clearly Liverpool and Manchester City, the front two. But absolutely, Manchester United. If you told me Manchester United will finish third next season, that wouldn't surprise me at all.
No, hopefully, yeah. Moving in the right direction. Henry, it's been an absolute pleasure as always, and we appreciate all the support and the fact you're willing to come on the channel and have a chat with us. We always appreciate that. It's been great chatting to you. I don't know about you, Ronaldo, but after speaking to Henry Winter, I feel a little bit more confident. He was quite... he seems to be, fully behind Ole, the players and everything.
I know, he's very positive, actually. It's basically sounded as if he can see, and obviously he's very close in with the clubs. He could see that United are very much on the rise, and big things are happening.
One thing that stood out for me is that he mentioned Jadon Sancho. He said he's a player that he could see in a Manchester United shirt. What do you make of that?
I'm buzzing, to be honest. Obviously, it's been well spoken about. We need reinforcements. We need a club or a squad, so to speak, that has competition at nearly every single position. If you look at the likes of Liverpool, you look at the likes of City, who we're chasing at the moment. They can pretty much field 2 starting 11s, and that's what United need to get to. So if you can get a player like Sancho, with obviously the elevation of Greenwood, then it can only be a good thing.
Last time I spoke to Henry Winter about a year ago, he was sort of downplaying the hype around Mason Greenwood. He was reluctant to overhype him. Certainly not the case anymore. Now, you've played football at an academy level for a Premier League club. What have you made around Mason Greenwood and the way that the club are now sort of almost willing to hype him up because he's that talented?
Well, obviously, as you know, as a young player, when you kind of get into kind of the first team mix and you've had a really, really successful youth career the way that Greenwood has, obviously scoring 40 goals and assists a season, basically just ruining that level of football. People kind of think it just transfers seamlessly to the first team level. It doesn't always work that way. When I was watching Greenwood play in the first team, from when I've seen him play at the youth level, he was just a little bit less expressive, a little bit less confident, not willing to take as many risks as he would take. That obviously risk and reward kind of thing. So people were kind of thinking, oh, he's playing a bit safe. He's not delivering the goods straight away, even though he's young. But people think he's been hyped up. But that's usually the transition that you get from a youth to a first team level. And then when you develop the confidence, you become more established. You kind of get the results that you're getting from him now. Basically, Greenwood now is basically what he was in youth football, but now he's become more established and more confident to the point where he's like, now I'm going to actually show the world what I'm made of at first team. I can take risks. I'm going to take people on. I'm going to double step over and put in the bottom corner. That's basically what he's been doing for as long as he can remember. And now that he's got that confidence and you know that people can back him, and Solskjaer's backing him, and he's not scared of making mistakes, I think it's looking very promising. And I don't think we've even seen the best of him. We definitely haven't seen the best of him, and that's kind of how it works when you transfer from the youth level to first team.
Quite a scary, mouth-watering prospect that we've not even seen the best of Mason Greenwood. Have you not even seen the best yet of the Tier 1 podcast? We're going to be bringing this every week. We're going to be speaking to the very top-tier journalists. Ronaldo will be here. I'm Jay. I'll be back as well. This has been Stretford Paddock. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.